My name is Allie Elwelling, Fire Prevention Specialist for the Kalispell Unit of the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, or the DNRC. I am here with Rick Moore, our service forester in the same office. We'd like to thank you for joining us as we talk with you about how to better protect your home in the Glacier Hills community from wildfire. Rick and I work together because it makes sense to consider forest health when selecting trees to thin and remove in order to improve the defensible or survivable space around your home. Today we'll start by briefly introducing a few background factors affecting the current wildland fire situation and take just a moment to mention the importance of fire prevention. We'll then address what we found during our visit to Glacier Hills, cover actions that landowners can take, and conclude by sharing a list of available resources offering additional information. The first factor to consider is the general history of fire suppression. Fire plays a necessary role in many ecosystems around the world, but for understandable reasons, including protection of life and property, we've been fighting fires for about a century. This relative exclusion of fire has often resulted in excessive accumulation of forest fuels. While talk of climate change is still controversial to some, the majority of scientists are in agreement that it is occurring. Large-scale atmospheric patterns created by climate change may affect local fire weather, fire frequency and intensity, as well as forest structure. Many fire managers have also recognized that fire seasons have generally been getting longer. A third factor affecting our wildfire situation is that more and more people continue to move into the wildland-urban interface, or WUI. Oftentimes, people are drawn to the wild areas but fail to recognize the risks that come along with building a life in the forest and brush, and are unaware of actions that may be taken to protect their investment. When you build a home in the wildland-urban interface, your structure simply becomes fuel in the event of a wildfire. By selectively removing vegetation, you can create the recommended defensible or survivable space around your home, while potentially increasing the health of the surrounding forest. Let's take a look at our area. The yellow on this image shows the wildland-urban interface, while the red shows the wildland-urban intermix. Take notice of the circle of red and yellow ringing the Flathead Valley. Next, we'll zoom into the area surrounding Glacier Hills. Back in 2004, a Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP, was completed for the Flathead Valley. This was updated in 2011. Local fire chiefs submitted comments about their fire service areas that were then captured in written and visual format. This image is from the publicly available Flathead County GIS, or Geographic Information System, website, and shows that Glacier Hills sits in an area of medium priority as far as wildfire planning is concerned. The diagonal lines identify priority areas within the districts. Remember, even an area of medium priority can experience high fire danger, depending on the seasonal conditions. The top two priorities identified for your area are 56 acres of Forest Service land and 90 acres of the Quorum Experimental Forest, both located east of Glacier Hills. It should also be noted that over the past 10 years, the Forest Service has been working on fuels reduction projects in the surrounding area. This topographic map shows that Glacier Hills sits in an area dominated by a north-northwest aspect. Generally speaking, north-facing slopes are usually cooler, wetter, and less likely to sustain fires than drier, south-facing slopes. But as evidence that this area will burn under the right conditions, consider the Half Moon Fire of 1929. This fire was started August 16th by logging-related operations. High winds and low relative humidity primed the forest for a crown fire that burned over 103,000 acres, including Tea Kettle and Columbia Mountain, in just 3 days. The next 4 slides show aerial photographs of the Glacier Hills vicinity. This first slide was taken in 1991. Notice the consistency and density of the forest. This second slide is from 2003, and you can begin to see the early stages of timber harvesting and clearing for what is now Glacier Hills. By 2006, most of the clearing had been completed. Here, you can see the open corridors created for roads and future home sites. In this final picture, taken in 2013, structures are now present. You can see that the area now has a greener tint, indicating new tree and plant growth over the past 7 years. This slide shows Rick using an increment borer to remove a core sample from one of the dug fir trees in the neighborhood. The darker, closer lines on the left represent slower growth from before the thinning project in 2004, while there was still competition for resources. The lighter, wide lines on the right are growth rings indicating the tree's response to the sudden increase in sunlight, water, and nutrients after the thinning. During our visit, we noted that the roads are of suggested minimum grade and are at least 22 feet wide with clear shoulders, sufficient for equipment access and egress, and that they are well marked with the recommended non-combustible reflective signs. It seems that there is only one fire hydrant available as a water source, and we would suggest identifying other water sources as well as checking the maintenance schedule on the existing hydrant. Another thing is that upkeep will be necessary along roads and driveways to keep those areas clear for access and to act as effective fuel breaks. We found the forest in your neighborhood to be dotted by areas that hold seasonal moisture, such as marshes, drainages, aspen groves, and meadows, that may help act as fuel breaks in the event of a fire. The previous thinning of the forest is apparent, and the relatively open forest is home to a variety of tree species, including spruce, larch, cottonwood, willow, dogwood, birch, Doug fir, and healthy mature white pine. Again, 10 years has passed since the thinning occurred, and some work will be required to maintain the open stands. It's also important to consider that, in late summer or during a drought, brush, grasses, and continuous fine fuels will burn hot and fast. Rick identified several forest insects and diseases, including spruce budworm, sequoia pitch moth, gall rust, and dwarf mistletoe. None of these pests are significant, and only two, the budworm and the mistletoe, have the potential to become significant. Thinning projects to improve defensible space can also address these issues, as forests that have been thinned contain vigorous trees which can better resist insect and disease infestations. While things look pretty good in Glacier Hills, there's always room for improvement. Suggestions we have include replacing difficult-to-see or wooden address signs with something non-combustible and reflective. While driving home one night, assess how easy or challenging it would be to find your home if you were visiting for the first time in the dark. Also, find out if emergency responders have unobstructed access to your gated community. So what else can we do? To begin with, understand that we who choose to live in these western forests live in a fire-adapted environment, and will need to accept the responsibility to both prevent wildfires and work to improve the situation on our own property. We need to recognize that responding resources may be limited during a fire situation. Folks often think that there will be a fire engine parked in their driveway, but some quick math should tell you that that is not likely the case. What will help us most is decreasing the ignitability of our own homes and working to improve our survivable space so that we may leave them unattended. We can also work with our neighbors and community to create a larger treated area, post clear signage, and plan for evacuation. We should also stay informed on burning conditions, know if there are any fire restrictions in place, and pay attention to fire weather during the Montana fire season. We'll address each one of these in just a minute. But first, as a fire prevention specialist, I cannot pass up the opportunity to share with you that, on average, 60 to 80% of fires are human-caused. For example, last year, the Kalispell unit of the DNRC alone responded to 94 fire calls. 82% of them were started by people. When we talk about the natural disaster of wildfire, consider that most fires are actually preventable, and that they are often started by unattended campfires, escaped debris burns, or sparks from a dragging trailer chain. Regardless of how a fire starts, it could end up like this. This slide shows the intense heat produced by a wildfire, along with the high winds and vertical lift that can transport embers up to a mile ahead of the main fire. This is what we need to be ready for when we accept the responsibility and prepare for the worst-case scenario. Imagine it's late August and it hasn't rained in 2 months. Temperatures have been in the high 90s and a lightning storm moves through. How comfortable will you feel about the preparedness of your home and property when a fire starts on the mountaintop within view of your community? Next, let's talk about the home ignition zone. The home ignition zone addresses the ignitability of your home and its immediate surroundings. Studies have shown that high-intensity fires 100 feet away will not ignite wood siding, and that it is usually the accumulation from a blizzard of embers associated with a fire that will ignite a house. This is why it is recommended to keep gutters clear of leaf and needle debris, to sweep needles and leaves from your porch, to maintain a 3 to 5 foot non-combustible perimeter around your home, to remove any tree branches that overhang or touch your house, and to refrain from landscaping with plants containing volatile oils such as juniper or cedar, and replacing them with fire-adapted native plants. Here are a few examples of things you can do to harden your home and make it less flammable. Use non-combustible roofing material such as composite shingle or metal. Use fire-resistant materials on exterior walls. Install double-paned or tempered glass windows. Enclose any eaves, fascias, and soffits. Cover any vent openings with 1/8 inch metal screening to keep embers from blowing in. And box in any decks and balconies with fire-resistant materials. Now consider the areas surrounding your home and divide it into 3 concentric zones. Zone 1 is 0 to 30 feet out. By selectively removing vegetation, keeping grass trimmed, and pruning trees, you remove fuel for the fire and can lower the intensity near your home. Zone 2 extends from 30 to 100 feet out. Here, there should be low flammability plants, 30-foot spacing between clusters of trees or brush, and branches should be pruned 6 to 10 feet from the ground to eliminate those ladder fuels, or fuels that allow a fire to climb from the ground and up into the trees. Zone 3 is from 100 to 200 feet out. This area should be thinned with well-spaced trees and heavy woody debris removed from the ground. Again, you should be able to leave your home unprotected, but you're also creating room for equipment to maneuver and for firefighters to work, should they be able to respond. So why all of this work around your home? Because for a wildfire to grow fast and out of control, 3 elements generally need to be in alignment: fuels, weather, and topography. While our actions cannot really have any effect on weather, which includes temperature, precipitation, wind, and sun, and we cannot really have any effect on topography, which includes terrain features such as canyons and saddles, the steepness of a slope, the direction that slope faces, and ultimately the amount of sun it receives, we can have some effect on the fuels. This is why we focus our time on removing fuels in the home ignition zone and the survivable space surrounding it. Compare the 2 homes pictured here. While both are located in the wildland-urban interface, one homeowner has taken the time to trim the grass and thin some trees, to relocate their woodpile at least 30 feet away, to improve their driveway for easy access, and to create defensible space, while the other has not. Imagine you are a firefighter responding to this neighborhood and you had just minutes to decide which home you could be more successful in protecting. Which would you choose? Living in a fire-adapted environment as we do involves being aware and staying informed. Here are just a few websites that offer more information about the wildfire situation locally and around the nation: debris burning and burn permits for Flathead County, fire weather forecasts, area burn restrictions, Firewise communities, and cost share programs available for fuels reduction work. You can also follow DNRC Fire on Twitter for updates on fires around Montana. In summary, Glacier Hills has been thinned in the past, but maintenance will be necessary. Even with preparation, there are no guarantees, as a wildfire season, as well as individual wildfire growth, is generally weather-dependent and, by nature, rather unpredictable. Many resources are available for additional information, and there is cost share funding for your area. Also, take a moment to review your evacuation plan, procedures, and routes. And last, we'd simply like to thank you for being proactive, for the work you've already completed, for being interested in improving your community's wildfire situation and the health of the surrounding forest, and for taking action to better prepare your home, your family, and your community in the event of a wildfire.